I've played a lot of PC games from classic to modern, and throughout time, there's been some standout games that impressed me. That being said, I am a tough critic, and when you've played as wide of a variety of games from as wide of a time frame as I have, you'll get a mixed bag of recommendations from me, be it a text adventure from the 1980s to a recent indie game. You never know what I'll suggest. That being said, today we're going to talk about 10 more games that you should check out on the PC. Let's begin. Zorc isn't for everyone, but when you consider the absolute beginnings of the adventure genre, look no further than Infocom. They made an entire company around the idea of words creating worlds, and Zorc was their first major franchise, and in many ways was their sole franchise that carried their name throughout time. The whole pretense of the original Zorc trilogy is the exploration of one massive underground empire, and in the first game, our sole job is to find 20 treasures of Zorc and put them in a cabinet, all the while dodging a thief that tries to steal our goodies. If you want to check this out, grab a pen and paper, pop on some adventuring music, and get ready to explore the world of Zorc. The most recent game in the Zorc franchise that mattered was Zorc Grand Inquisitor, but I'm sure many of you played Return to Zorc. I have a love-hate relationship with real-time strategy games because I cut my teeth on the genre with Warcraft, and that game in particular can go pound sand into its dusty asshole. I can't stand the first Warcraft game, it's a mean game. Then I played StarCraft, kind of enjoyed it for a while, and then my next RTS was Dawn of War. I love Warhammer 40k, and while I've never played the tabletop game, the sheer artistic license of the lore of Warhammer 40k is absolutely brilliant, and so playing a game based around that, I was excited. Dawn of War is hands down the golden standard of RTS games for me, and no, I haven't played that many, but I would be hard-pressed to find a game that would surpass Dawn of War. It's just a badass game, and yeah, it's still hard, but fuck, it's fun. It's intuitive. The story is great, and I do suggest that you check it out. For anyone who cares about lore, Dawn of War covers the Tartarus campaign and the Blood Raven Space Marines led by Captain Gabriel Angelos. Warhammer as a franchise has been going strong for years, and there's no way it's going to go away anytime soon. The games bounce around between different genres, and the most recent mainline game in the 40k world is Rogue Trader, and it's an RPG. Feel free to check it out. I love Sierra. I think that's quite obvious. By the way, did you know that I interviewed Ken Williams, the co-creator of Sierra? I'll link part 1 of that interview down below. Among all of the legendary adventure games created by Sierra in the early 90s, there were a few that were aimed specifically at children. And if you're making games for kids, then you might want to make it substantial in the education department, which is what Sierra Discovery as a series is all about. Games that focus on some ethical and moral concept watered down for children. Now, the only one I've played so far was EcoQuest: The Search for Cetus, which I went into thinking it would be some dumbass game about finding a whale, but after an hour, I was hooked. It's a really decent point-and-click game, and the core ethical message is, stop throwing your fucking car batteries into the ocean. Well, not like that. It focuses on teaching kids not to pollute and to recycle. The sequel focused on not chopping down the Amazon rainforest, which is a priority for all children, right? Don't chop down the rainforest. I'm kind of curious to play that one as well. A little bit of Sierra knowledge for you. This was Jane Jensen's first game, the same lady that would make the Gabriel Knight franchise. We all know Call of Duty. Activision has been shoving this down our mouth like my parents with the Catholic religion since 2003, and the one thing I can say is that if you go back and play the first game, it's aged fairly well. Everything we know and love from Call of Duty now started here, from the multiple campaign perspectives to the push to advanced system of level progression to the effects of shell shock. I actually had a good time. Now, that being said, many first-person shooters of the era suffered from ridiculous AI, and one of the more refreshing aspects of Call of Duty is that everything tends to line up. The AI isn't inherently stupid, their comments are relevant, and it simulates the environment of war fairly faithfully. Mad props to Infinity Ward for competing with the market holder at the time, Medal of Honor. Because in my opinion, they blew Medal of Honor clear out of the water. You know how I talk about Sierra, like, a lot, because I love their point and clicks? Well, Lucasfilm did the same thing. I adore Monkey Island, and the only other franchise I've dipped my little toesies in was the Indiana Jones franchise. Out of the few that I played, the one that stood out was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Now, if you've seen the movie, then you know what the game is about, because when it comes to source material, the devs remained incredibly faithful to it, and in some cases even expanded on it, which is something you don't tend to see. For anyone who hasn't seen the movie, basically Indiana Jones goes back to his university after getting the Cross of Coronado, and gets a tip about the Holy Grail. Also gets informed that his father's disappeared. I don't think he really cares about his dad though, but the Holy Grail? Brother! Sign me up. So we go across the desert and deal with tons of silly fights, and deal with a rather novel system of communication, a system that would be improved and utilized in later games such as Secret of Monkey Island. True story. If you want a good point and click, this is a great one to play, but understand, Lucasfilm games can be just as challenging as Sierra titles, so don't think that just because you know the movie, you'll be able to breeze through this. There is an upcoming game in the franchise called Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, but the most recent one that mattered was LEGO Indiana Jones. Why not play another adventure game? Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards follows the story of Larry Laffer, who really wants to get laid, like really! He needs to get laid to a capacity that even the most virgin of virgins will never understand. So, let's get him laid. It was made by Al Lowe, and I actually had an interview with him 2 weeks ago, and I'm working on that right now so that everyone can hear the design philosophy of the series from the man himself. Leisure Suit Larry is a good time though. In some occasions it suffers from Sierra Moon logic, and that's a trend that carried through the whole franchise, but looking back on my experience with it, I think it's worth it to see true tongue-in-cheek humor on a gaming medium that still stands to this day. Don't forget, there is a VGA remake of this, so you don't feel like you need to subject yourself to the text parser unless you really want to get the vintage feel of Leisure Suit Larry 1. I love outer space. The setting has always appealed to me, and when you have a powerful storyline with the free will of choice in how you speak to people, it's like a wet dream to me. I'm able to portray a character and shoot people in the face while hoping I didn't make my friend angry. Sign me up. Mass Effect is wonderful. Some people think it isn't, and that's okay, but for me, it's a great game, despite how the trilogy ended. Plot-wise, it's 2148 and the humans discovered an outpost on Mars that has a mass relay allowing for faster-than-light travel. For those of you who are like, what even is that? Well, think of Star Wars hyperjumps. Once humans discovered the mass relays, they were able to talk to all of these other alien races like the Solarians, the Turians, Asari, and the Krogan, a wide berth of different species that are so well fleshed out when it comes to culture. I appreciate it tremendously. We play as Commander Shepard, who works for the Systems Alliance Navy, who goes to the Citadel to become a Spectre, which is basically a super agent of the universe, and from there, we tackle enemies of biblical proportion, end times enemies, to put it lightly. The most recent game in the franchise was Mass Effect Andromeda, and while people don't tend to like it, I really don't mind it. In fact, I was kind of excited to see the franchise continue. There is a new game coming out, but Lord knows when it will be released. I don't even think it has a name yet. I bought this game from the Scholastic Book Fair in 1999, and I played it for the better part of a year. Move over, Donkey Kong 64. Sit the fuck down, Jet Force Gemini. Wait your turn, Pokemon Snap. This game blew me away. It's so simple and cathartic to build your own theme park, to be able to create these intricate roller coasters and accomplish the pretty simple objectives. I love Roller Coaster Tycoon. To me, the franchise has consistently hit all of the marks. I could easily pop in 2 and 3 on here, but it's been so long since I've played it, I don't know if it aged well. If you know, feel free to tell the community down in the comments section below. A lot of people don't know, but Roller Coaster Tycoon was inspired by Transport Tycoon, and now that I think about it, where we have simulators for everything nowadays, back then, it was Tycoon this, Tycoon that. It's kind of funny how history repeats itself sometimes, isn't it? The most recent game in the franchise was Roller Coaster Tycoon World, and it's horrible. Thank you, Atari. You fucked it up. We all know the Oregon Trail, and in many ways the Oregon Trail is a litmus test to see how old someone is. If you walked up to me and asked me what did Oregon Trail look like, I'd tell you a small buggy moving right to left. and then I died of dysentery. I love the Oregon Trail because it makes the most devious of humanity's afflictions, be it health or environmentally related, seem like such common occurrences. Hey hun, can't go to the store today. Trail's washed out, 2 of the cows are stuck in quicksand. Now, the original run of Oregon Trail was released on the home microcomputer, specifically the HP 2100, and it was a text adventure which I have played, but it's not really that great. In many ways, it's far too easy. The version I'm talking about right now is the 1985 version released by the Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium, MEC for short. AKA, this is the game that you likely played in school because it was on every computer, it seemed, and there's a reason why this game was inducted into the World Video Game Hall of Fame. Our objective is simple. The East Coast blows, and an old white person said, "Eminent domain. Natives are savages. Quicksand. Go west." And we do. We take our party and we go west, hoping they don't shit their vitality out of their asshole for drinking poo-poo water, or hope that the engineering of our shoddy wagon holds up against climbing over mountains and through rivers. It's a fun game to play. It's even more fun to play while streaming it. In a previous episode, I said that Outlast was one of the greatest horror games that I've ever played, and I was prepared to leave it at that. But one of my viewers redeemed a DLC request and asked me to play Whistleblower, the only DLC for the first game. Now, usually when DLC is introduced, in many ways it doesn't seem to add to the game, at least from my experience it doesn't. It's just a bare bones expansion of the base experience. I can't say the same for Whistleblower. The game is a fucking nightmare, in a good way of course. The emotions of constant fight or flight that I was familiar with in the original game were amplified 12-fold. And the way that the story is presented, it flows fairly well in parallel to what Miles Upshur is doing during the vanilla game. For those of you who haven't messed around with Outlast, the original game features Miles Upshur, who's an investigative reporter doing a deep dive on Mount Massive Asylum. Whistleblower features a software engineer named Waylon Park. So while we have someone going in to get answers in Outlast, in Whistleblower, we play an employee trying to escape. It's a cool duality of plot. And that's all for me today. Are there any other PC games that you feel people should check out? Feel free to comment them down below. Also, I'd love for you to join my gaming adventure, my quest to preserve video gaming history. So hit that subscribe button. Finally, the thumbs up button is single-handedly one of the most important aspects of what you can do for me if you like what you see. It helps with visibility for the channel and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortefyre out.